Hey everyone, sorry for the poor connection right off the bat, but I wanted to give my thoughts on, well, because everybody if you look here on YouTube, a lot of people have given their thoughts so far to the whole intro, the new intro, the intro for the new DuckTales reboot that we're getting in 2 months with the 24-hour run of the movie premiere of the show, and then of course the show's official debut in official episodic debut in September. And I have to say that basically, I thought it was okay. I mean, Andre Meadows of Black Nerd Comedy basically broke down when he saw it exactly what was clued in for us. And when you rewatch it, you see several of these clues yourself. You see several of these indications of what's going on. And then you hear what other people have to say about the intro and about the show itself. And, who's going to be in it, how they look like they're going to be represented. And I have to say that the intro and some of the screenshots and stuff and clips and all that we've been getting kind of indicates that this is definitely going to have the spirit of DuckTales, but it's going to have more of that. But it's going to be more of, it's going to have the spirit of DuckTales, of the original DuckTales, but it's going to be more modernized. It's going to be more like, it's going to be more like, hey, you thought you knew certain characters, well, get ready to see these characters in a whole new light. And to me that's pretty cool. So as far as it goes, I thought it was okay. I thought it was a nice upbeated version of it. I mean, I do agree that I kind of like the way it's done. How you basically have you have the intro being a hybrid. You basically have the intro being in the style of a comic. In other words, just the characters and and stuff all popping out of these comic strip or comic book panels, and I like that because it's a bit of a homage to the to basically where DuckTales began, and that was with the Uncle Scrooge comics. And like I said, it's a great homage there because you're basically indicating that this is where it all started with the comics, and now this is where we are. Again, I do like the fact that they've made it more, that they're doing that. And I like the fact that they emphasize throughout, who's going to be in it, who's going to be playing some part, who's going to, have integral roles in it. Integral, easy for me to say, roles in the show. So that's pretty cool to see. I mean, I like how they show, like with Webby, in the old show, it wasn't until the end where they did that episode called New Gizmo Kids on the Block, and she ended up being the last of the 4 kids to don the Gizmo outfit, Gizmo Duck outfit, after it got accidentally shrunk, and how she was able to, in that disguise, kind of prove that she's more than capable of taking care of herself. And to kind of see that this incarnation of Webby is going to be in the same vein of, oh, I'm capable of taking care of myself. She's more action-adventure oriented in a sense, and I guess she's being presented as being the same age as Huey, Dewey, and Louie. I think that's kind of good, and you kind of see, like I said, you kind of see in one of the parts of the intro where she's like shooting a grappling hook or something like that, and it's like, okay, the original Webby wouldn't do that, but yet here she is. And then, of course, you could tell that Mrs. Beakley, I guess, who's her grandmother or her caretaker, you can kind of tell that she's been changed up a little bit more. You know, she's gonna have, obviously, she's gonna have some glasses. She's gonna, well, she did have glasses in the original. What am I saying? But it's more like, you know, it's not like the spectacle kind of glasses. You know, it's not the spectacle kind of glasses. No, it's like regular glasses, like what I'm wearing. And you know, and it seems that she's gonna be almost the complete opposite of what she was in the show. I mean, yeah, she could get mad, she can get angry and want to fight, but we've never seen it. But yet this new intro kind of indicates that she's going to be a fighter, that she is going to throw down if necessary. And it indicates, just by the way she kind of like moves her hand a little bit like this, that she might know some martial arts. So that'll be interesting. I like the fact that we're getting Gyro Gearloose in there. You know, his little robot, or Robbie, or whatever, that little robot thing he made, or Bulby, or whatever it's called. But this time it's not just a little guy. It's like, well, he might be a little Bulby robot, but I think the way it's going to be presented is, you know, the way it's going to be presented is, like I said, the way it's going to be presented is basically, you know, it's like Gyro's little robot buddy is now going to be able to kind of combine with other robotic technology. Like, he's going to have his own big robot body, and then he's going to have maybe other things that he combines with, and we'll just see what happens from there. I'm sorry for the interruption. There's some people in the back that are yelling. So anyway, so that looks good. You know, one thing everybody's, you know, wondering about is the villains. Well, the villains, obviously, the ones you're going to see almost on a regular basis, to me, got highlighted towards the end of the intro, where you had Flintheart, you had one of the Beagle Boys, you had Ma Beagle, and then you had this other character, I can't think of his name, but from what I understand, and anybody else understands, he's going to be a character that's more like, he's a new character, basically. He's a new character, and he's going to be more along the lines of almost a Steve, almost along the lines of a parody of Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg, I think, the guy that founded Facebook. Going to be a parody, if not a hybrid, of Zuckerberg, Gates, you know, and all that, Gates and those kind of people. But the difference is he's more about himself than he is about anybody else, and that's going to be kind of cool, because I mean, obviously he's going to be a villain, or he's going to be an antagonist of some kind, and he's going to, I guess, see Scrooge or even Gyro or somebody as a rival, and he's going to want to outdo them. I don't know. So it's going to be cool. It'll be nice to see what he's going to be bringing to the table as far as the show goes. But like I said, besides him, you have Ma Beagle, it looks like Big Time Beagle, or whatever his name was, and Flintheart. You're looking at those four right now as being your primary villains, your primary antagonists to Scrooge. So that's going to be interesting, again, to see how they're portrayed in the show, especially being voiced by the people that they got to voice them. So it's going to be interesting like I said, to see what roles they play in the show, and how they do, how it's done. The one emphasis throughout this was you had them chasing after, not just Scrooge and his family, but you had them primarily chasing after Scrooge's number one dime. Now, one thing that's always been an indication in the original show was Scrooge's number one dime would never really be brought up unless it involved Magica the Spell. Now, we don't see Magica, but I think we're kind of seeing maybe her, because you wonder exactly who this pirate chick is, and obviously she looks like a pirate chick. This pirate bird chick is, whatever she is, cockatiel chip, female. Basically, you want to know who this female pirate is, this female bird pirate is, and I'm thinking that might be our Magica. I don't know why, but I'm thinking for some reason that's going to be our Magica. Unless Magica does come in and she's not going to be featured prominently, as she was in the original show, then I see her being one of those reoccurring, one of those villains that just is like a on and off kind of villain. Basically, it's like, she could be portrayed as one of the probably the big baddie of the show. Like once in a while, maybe twice, 3 times a season, Scrooge and his family go up against her, and she's probably the biggest threat they're going to have. And perhaps all these villains that we're going to get in this season are going to associate with her. They're going to associate with her in some way, because according to Andre and several other people, the first season is supposed to be one big long story arc. In other words, it's supposed to be one big long story arc, and basically it's going to be an introductory season. It's going to be an introductory season in a sense. And like I said, the big story arc for it is probably, centered around some kind of treasure hunt, some kind of artifacts and stuff. And it obviously, like I said, it's going to involve, like I say, some artifacts or something. Maybe it's going to be focused around the number one dime, and maybe there are certain artifacts that they have to hunt or go after to try to figure out why the number one dime is, means so much to people. Why is it so precious? It's just to everybody else besides Scrooge, because we know the story. Scrooge holds on to it because that's the first dime he's ever made. So is there some kind of mythical power to it that he doesn't even know, and maybe he's going to find out. So the intro really kind of gave us an idea, at least for the first season, of what we're going to get. Now, according to reports and everything, we're supposed to get other characters, maybe in the first season, maybe towards the end of it, possibly going into the second season, and who knows what roles they'll play. But one thing I look at with these characters, I think they're gonna, depending on when they appear, because we didn't see them in the intro, we didn't see no hint of them there. So if it's around the end of the first season and mostly into the second season, then I expect as we get more towards that part, towards that portion of the show, or that portion of the series, I should say, I think whenever they debut, they're going to be bringing a lot to the table. Now, we do know that Goldie is going to be back in this show, but from the way she is portrayed, character design wise, it looks like she's going to still be young. Now that could be a flashback design, because we know in the original series, when she appeared in flashback and in present time, she had aged. You know, young. She was young in the past. She was portrayed as young in the past, and then when we saw her in the present, she was older. So, is that going to be the same way here? Is Goldie going to be portrayed, the same way here, or are they going to throw a wrench into the situation, and maybe Goldie has found some kind of fountain of youth with some kind of mystical power that ties into the whole first season, or maybe whatever they got planned for the second season. You know, does Goldie find some kind of fountain of youth or something that keeps her young? You know, that to me could be a really interesting, really interesting plot as far as either the first season or maybe the second season goes. So we'll just have to see what they have planned for her. Another character, of course, is Fenton Crackshell, aka Gizmo Duck. But he also has but here's what's funny. According to one of the people that did a report on this on YouTube, his name is Fenton Crackshell, but then he has an addition to his name. It's kind of like kind of indicating that he's going to be some kind of Hispanic kind of like bird. You know, he'll still have probably his blathering Bratherskite saying, but still, it sounds like he's going to be part Hispanic, which would definitely put a twist on Fenton's character. So, and the way he's colored, not to bring race or anything into this, but he's a darker color. He's more tan colored than he was in the original series. So again, he might be like a Hispanic Puerto Rican kind of like bird. We don't know yet. One thing that I've noticed with Fenton is that his Gizmo Duck suit is going to be a lot bigger than it was before. So it's going to be a little bit more. It looks like whenever we get to see it in action, it's going to be more battle ready than the original was. I mean, the original still had its gimmicks and gadgets and all that, and I'm sure this one will, and I'm sure the writers will incorporate a lot of that into this Gizmo suit. But the way it also looks is it's going to have a lot more to it. It's going to have a lot more, and I can't wait to see exactly what they do with Fenton in this scenario. I can't wait. I can't wait to see that. One thing I think they should do, one thing we don't know is whether or not Gandra D, Fenton's girlfriend, is going to be in the show. I mean, we do know if Fenton's going to be in there. There's a possibility his mama will be in there, Mrs. Mrs. Crackshell. She'll be in there. Will we finally also get to see his father? That's a good question. We never got to know whether or not what happened to his dad. So will Fenton end up? Will we end up finally seeing Fenton's dad as well? That to me could be an intriguing possibility. But to me, I think obviously what we need to happen here is, of course, if you're going to have Fenton in there, there's no doubt you're going to have his mom in there. They just probably haven't cast her yet. But you also got to get Gandra D in there. Everybody knows that has grown up with DuckTales, and even if you're a new generation and you watch the old cartoons, the original DuckTales, you know that Fenton has a girlfriend in Gandra D. And the one scenario about this is Gandra D never knew unless it happened off screen, and Disney just never indicated it in the show somehow. But hold on. But we know, like I was saying, we don't know if Disney indicated it towards the end, if she found out off screen or whatever. But Gandra never really knew that Fenton and Gizmo Duck were one and the same. Like I said, we don't know if she probably found out off screen or what. But the one thing I hope they do here is they do allow her. One thing I hope they do here, especially if this is going to be a more updated version of DuckTales, is if you're going to bring her in, you gotta at least let her find out. You can't play her as being dumb. I mean, she has been portrayed as being very smart and a quick learner and all that. So you can't, in the original show, so you can't basically have her be portrayed as anything else in the reboot if you bring her in. And you can't have her portrayed as anything else in the reboot. You gotta anything else than what she was, if not more so. What I'm saying is you can't have her portrayed as as being dumb. Like, okay, she's smart enough to know about robotics, international espionage, take a class on it, and all that, as we found out in one episode. So you can't, to me, you can't have a character like that. Like I said, you can't have a character like that be portrayed as being smart, but not smart enough to put two and two together. So in my opinion, what they need to do is they need to allow her to find out that Fenton and Gizmo Duck are one and the same. They need to do that. They need to make it happen. And at the same time, what they need to do is they need to capitalize on that opportunity. They need to capitalize on it by at least letting her don the Gizmo Duck outfit. You gotta let them do that. I mean, Marvel did it briefly in, I think, the third Iron Man, where Pepper ended up donning the Iron Man suit for a brief period. In the comics, you have Mary Jane having donned the Iron Man suit, which, let's be honest, Gizmo Duck is inspired from. The Gizmo Duck suit is inspired from. So, why not take a stab at it? Why not take a stab at it, let's say, and allow Gandra D, if she's being brought into the show, which Disney would be foolish not to do, not to include her, because, like I said, if you're going to bring in Fenton, there's no doubt you got to bring in his mother. So, along with that, you also got to bring in his girlfriend. You got to bring in Gandra D. So, to me, this, like I said, this is the perfect opportunity to capitalize on the fact that she is exactly what she was. That she kind of hinted and shown in one episode that she's a little bit smarter than what we think. She's smarter than everybody thinks. She's very intelligent. But for some odd reason, despite that, she suffered from the Lois Lane syndrome, as people called it, for a while. Lois Lane suffered from for a while before DC corrected that. And what I mean by suffering from the Lois Lane syndrome is, yeah, she was smart and intelligent enough to do this and that, but she wasn't smart and intelligent enough to put two and two together. Like, oh, wait a minute. When Clark leaves, Superman appears. When Superman leaves, Clark appears. Put two and two together. And like I say, DC finally corrected that. So in my opinion, Disney needs to capitalize with this reboot when they bring Gizmo Duck in, when they bring Fenton in, bring his entourage, from his mom and his girlfriend possibly in. You need to make Gandra smart enough to put two and two together. You need to do that. Disney needs to do that. And to me, it's one of the most logical things to do. Like I said, another thing they need to do, and I'm sure they would kind of kick themselves in the butt for not doing, is, hey, if you can have Huey, Dewey, Louie, and Webby don a shrunken Gizmo Duck outfit and become the Gizmo Kid individually at separate times, then why not? Then why didn't you and also have Fenton's mom don it, and I think even Scrooge and even Launchpad don it? Why not? Why didn't they have Gandra don it? See, that to me is an opportunity I'm sure they kind of look back and regret and not doing. So I'm hoping, one of my hopes for this show is that they do that. I know I kind of ranted on this a lot longer than anything else I talked about here in this live video, but I think this is something they need to do. They really do. I mean, yeah, you could still have, you could still do an episode with Launchpad probably donning it by accident. You can have an episode where the nephews don it. Maybe they stand on each other's shoulders, and when they don the outfit, it kind of balances them out, and they're able to fit in there. Or at least you have the nephews and Webby, like I say, don it by standing on each other's shoulder, and when it comes around them and forms around them, it balances them out to be become Gizmo Duck. So and you can have Fenton's mom don it as well. But in this day and age, Disney would have to be foolish not to allow Gandra D, if she's being brought back as well, not to don it as well, not to become Gizmo, not to have an episode where she becomes Gizmo Duck or Gizmo Gal, whatever they want to call a female version of Gizmo Duck. They'd have to be foolish not to do that. They'd have to be foolish not to do that. And this is, to me, would be the perfect opportunity. This is the perfect opportunity for them to do that. Another thing as well is, Darkwing Duck is a character that obviously ties into the DuckTales universe. He ties into the Uncle Scrooge universe. So I think if there's plans to do other reboots and retcons of old Disney afternoon shows, what better way to potentially tease the launching of a Darkwing Duck reboot than maybe doing an episode where you have Darkwing Duck come in? Well, maybe it's an episode where Scrooge has to go to St. Bernard as part of a business trip or something, and you have him encounter Darkwing Duck. And you can even bring Fenton on board for the trip, and he becomes Gizmo Duck, and thus you have that Gizmo Duck, Darkwing Duck friendly rivalry. It could really, to me, not only would you be teasing the potential of another rebooted, a spin-off and reboot of another Disney afternoon classic, but at the same time, you'd be finally, in a way, connecting both characters, both shows together in one big crossover that doesn't take place in the comics. So to me, that right there is possibly the most so to me, that is possibly one of the most logical things for Disney to do. Ooh, and I'd be all for it. I and anybody else would be all for it. We really would. Another thing I think they should do, honestly, just, not just by looking at the intro itself and the clips that have been showcased throughout, but I think another thing they should do, and this is just me, but I think another thing they should do, and I think it could really be to the benefit, another thing I think they should do is do their own take on the Darkwing Duck episode, Slime Okay, You're Okay. And I think they should do their own take on it with Webby maybe getting doused with some kind of chemical, and she goes through the same, metamorphosis. She goes through the same change, she gets the same abilities and all that. The only difference, instead of having her turn into a puddle of, instead of her losing intelligence and all that, you kind of play with the fact that that the reason she became this is because she got touched or touched by some kind of creature or doused with some kind of chemical, and she's not the only one. And you find out some other ducks, mostly one duck that's behind the whole thing, or one criminal or mastermind is behind the whole thing, and you twist it and you kind of add a twist that the longer Webby stays that way, or she'll still be okay, but the big twist you can put in there is if Webby comes in contact with the person, with the character behind it, with the mastermind, with the antagonist that's behind it, and let's say this antagonist has already become what she has, but if not more evolved, that if she gets close to him, there's a chance that he can end up absorbing her and she would become a part of him, maybe become a limb or something like that, and the only way to free her is to destroy him. So that could be a twist that they would add in. I mean, it might be a little dark for a DuckTales show, but I think it could work, because if you tell the same story that you did in the same story that was told in Darkwing Duck, then people pretty much say it's predictable. Pretty much anybody that grew up on Darkwing Duck would say, oh, we know what's going to happen. But if you add in this element to where it's not by accident, but by someone that purposely wants to turn certain individuals, if not the entire population of Duckburg, if not the world, into slime creatures, goo creatures, whatever, and that whenever, if they get close to him, they could end up being absorbed and becoming part of him, like either become a limb or just be absorbed into his body, and there's nothing they can do. That could be a unique twist. That could be interesting, and that would put into question, whether or not Disney would do this to a beloved character if this incarnation of Webby becomes more popular than the other one. But I think that's something they should do. My opinion, I think the way the show can go, that's something they should do. I really do. Another thing I think they should do as well is they need to do their own take on the Bubba Duck story. They need to bring Bubba Duck in somehow. Again, we don't know if he's going to be brought in, but it'd be nice if he was. It'd be interesting on how they would do their own take on it, because just to see Bubba Duck back in there in this new incarnation, that would be interesting. That would be kind of nice to see, in my opinion. That would be very nice to see. So I think they need to do that. I really do. I think they need to do that. I think they need to run with. I think they need to run with it. Is what they need to do. They need to run with that, and hopefully they are thinking about doing it. Will they do it in the second season? We don't know. Will they do it potentially in a third season? We don't know. But it would be something that I think could really work in their favor. And again, they can find different and unique ways of a different and unique way of presenting it. And to me, it could work. It really could. What else could they do? Well, I talked about Darkwing Duck crossing over with them, and they could still do that. They could still do it the way I suggested. But another thing I think they should do is if you really want to tease potential, if you want to tease potential Disney afternoon reboots that the Disney Channel could do, then I think the best thing for them to do, in my opinion, is to do a the Legend of the Chaos God adaptation, or Legend of the Chaos God adaptation. For some of you that don't know, Legend of the Chaos God was a multi-Disney Adventure Magazine issue. Well, basically, it was a multi-part. What it was a multi-issue Disney Afternoon event that you were only able to read in the mini Disney Adventure Magazine digest. You were only able to read the Legend of the Chaos God in the Disney Adventures magazine, a Disney Adventures magazine digest. You were only able to read it there, and each part dealt with and each part took place in a different Disney afternoon show, or a different Disney afternoon show's universe. For example, the first part took place in Tailspin. The second part took place in Rescue Rangers. The third part took place in Goof Troop. The fourth part took place in DuckTales, and the fifth part took place in Darkwing Duck. So to me, that could be probably the best opportunity Disney could have to really tease, if not test the waters, with potentially other Disney Afternoon reboots and spin-offs that they could do, or reboots they can do. I mean, if you get a lot of fans behind that, watching maybe the Legend of the Chaos God made for television or made for Disney Channel movie, you have a lot of them tuning in to see that, then I guarantee you Disney will have to really start considering, hey, maybe there's money here with rebooting the Disney Afternoon, maybe rebooting these certain Disney Afternoon shows. I think Disney right now probably has the best opportunity of doing that with DuckTales. I mean, take a look at, shows that they did do. Lilo and Stitch, which is based off the Lilo and Stitch movie, who did they cross over with? They crossed over with the Proud Family. They crossed over with Kim Possible. They crossed over with American Dragon. They crossed over with freaking Recess. So, to me, I think this would be the best opportunity for Disney to do probably a mega crossover of other Disney Afternoon shows in this adapted version, in this new rebooted DuckTales show, by doing a Legend of the Chaos God adaptation for the show, and bringing in all these other Disney Afternoon characters. And the way you would present it is you would have Scrooge and all of them find, you could have it all start maybe at a museum with Scrooge gaining acts, showing that he's gotten the Chaos God gem, but then explaining how it all came about, how it all was found, and you could lead into different scenarios, into different flashbacks of how the other Disney Afternoon characters from Tailspin, Goof Troop, Rescue Rangers came in contact. And then after telling those three stories, you could have a situation where something happens, the Beagle Boys or Glumgold or somebody comes in, releases the Chaos God, or at least breaks the containment or the glass case or jewel case that it's in, and it starts to possess anybody around it. You could play with that, and then you could launch into the fifth part, which would be with Darkwing Duck. It could be your first crossover, it could be the second crossover. The potential is there. But overall, I will say this. The intro, I know I kind of got a little off from the intro, but the intro to me really opened the doors, in my opinion, just showcasing not only who's going to be involved, not only who might be the primary villains, but to me, just looking at it, it opened the doors, in my opinion, of what potentially this show could lead towards. And my thoughts are, if they go in certain directions that I've mentioned, if they go with, Gandra D finding out Gizmo Duck in fentanyl one and the same, and even doing an episode where she dons the Gizmo Duck outfit and becomes a female Gizmo Duck, that is something they need to do, because they had the potential to capitalize on it in the first show, in the original show, I should say, and they never did. This could be that potential. This could be that opportunity. Another thing, in my opinion, is they got to do a crossover with Darkwing Duck to tease that potential for Darkwing Duck reboot. And like I said, they also have to do possibly a a crossover, maybe like I said, an adaptation or a loose adaptation or whatever of the Legend of the Chaos God story to tease potentially other Disney Afternoon reboots that they can do. I don't know what that is, but overall, I think they need to do this. I think it's possibly, but again, those ideas along with Webby, with them, along with Webby doing a potentially, with them possibly doing their own take on the whole Slimo K, Euro K storyline in Darkwing Duck with that twist, that I mentioned for Webby being the central point of all that. I think they need to do that. I think they need to do I think they need to do a take. I think they need to do a I think they need to do a new adaptation of how they meet Bubba Duck. They need to do all this. And to me, I honestly think it could work. I think honestly it could really work. So that's all I'm gonna say, folks. Let me know what you think down below, though. I gotta go back in, probably get something quick to eat before my lunch is up. But let me know what you think. Do you think the potential is there for all this to happen? What would you like to see happen? Do you agree with some of my theories of what could happen and potentially tease and maybe lead towards in the future? Let me know down below. Let me know what you think. And again, what did you think of the intro? I thought it was good. I like the fact that it kind of sets up what the first season could be about, with the number one dime, with Scrooge's number one dime being a central point, and possibly Magica being Magica possibly the big baddie that comes around once in a while. And what do you think of the intro? What do you